Hi folks, HR Funk here. Out on the range with my Military Armament Corporation Model 1014 shotgun, and in recent months, several of you have asked me questions about this shotgun. Variously, I've been asked, do I still have the MAC 1014? Do I still like the MAC 1014? And is the MAC 1014 still running well? And the answer to all those questions is yes. But based on those questions, I thought it would be a good idea for an update video because it's now been almost exactly 2 years since I originally acquired the MAC 1014. And I brought it out here on the range today to do a quick functioning test, and this is going to be with some ammo that I would almost expect it to fail with if it was going to fail to function properly. I'll show you the ammunition in a little bit. It is old, and I'm not entirely sure even what shot load that it has in it or what velocity it's loaded to or anything else. We'll see how it runs. In any case, the other question that I've been asked is also about cleaning the MAC 1014. So after I do a little bit of shooting, we'll head back to the shop and I'll show what I do when I clean this shotgun. So anyway, let's get to it and see how the MAC 1014 is going to perform today. All right, folks, this ought to be fun. This is some old Western Super X ammunition. Now notice I didn't say Winchester Western. This is from the days before Winchester acquired Western ammunition. This stuff is so old that it's loaded in paper shot shells, and the top of the box is gone. This is a dusty box that's been in my basement for a long time. I don't remember where I got this stuff from, but presumably the top of the box identified the type of shot that is in this ammunition. The only thing I can go by is the number 2 that is on the very front of the shell. You might be able to see that right there. And I've got this loaded up into the 1014. And this is another one of those loads that if it was going to fail, I would expect it to fail with this stuff. Let's see what happens. Wow, it's got some steam behind it. Western loaded this stuff for real. Holy smokes! That was actually some pretty good ammunition. I'm going to load up another magazine and run some more through this shotgun. So, let's see if things run as well the second time as they did the first time. Wow! Running those old paper shot shells, folks. And I've got about 5 rounds of this stuff left, so I may as well shoot it up. Last 5 rounds of the Western ammunition, presumably number 2 shot. I wish I had some more of this stuff. Let's see how they run. Ran like a top. All right, let's head back to the shop and talk about cleaning the 1014. I am now back in the shop with the MAC 1014 shotgun, and as you can see, I have completely disassembled it, and I decided not to show that process in this video because I covered it in detail in my original review video for the MAC 1014. If you're not familiar with the process for disassembling and reassembling the 1014, I will put a link to that video in the description of this one, and if you go to that original video, the disassembly and reassembly picks up at about the 13.5-minute mark. In any case, I am going to discuss how I clean this shotgun. I am going to explain what I do, but I am not going to make you sit here and watch me clean this shotgun. I'm not going to bore you to death doing that, but what I'll do is turn on the camera, tell you what I'm about to do, I'll complete that process, and then I'll come back and I'll tell you the next thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to start the cleaning process with the barrel, and as you can see, I have it inverted in my vise. Reason being, as I am working on the barrel itself, I don't want to get any sort of solvent or any preservative or anything into the gas system. So I've got it turned this way to let gravity hopefully help me to keep anything from seeping its way into there. It's important to keep the gas system dry. I will clean it, but I'm not going to worry about over cleaning it. But I don't want to get any sort of oil or liquid down in there so that when the hot propellant gas comes into the gas chambers, it doesn't turn that liquid into essentially tar. So to begin with, I'm just going to start out with a patch moistened with solvent. I'm going to get the inside of the shotgun bore good and wet. Then I'm going to brush it out with a proper 12 gauge size bronze bore brush. And then finally I will clean it out once again with clean patches so that I have a nice clean bore for my shotgun. And that's looking pretty good for the bore. Now I'm going to grab a brush and I'm going to scrub these locking recesses for the bolt just to make sure that there's no grit or anything down in there that's going to cause a problem as the bolt is locking in place and unlocking. And those locking recesses are looking nice and clean. On we go to the gas cylinders, and all I'm going to do is scrub these out with an appropriately sized brush. And for this, I am not going to use any solvent or anything else inside here. This is a nylon brush, by the way. All I want to do is just loosen up any residue that might be inside there, and then I'm going to brush it out momentarily with a clean patch, and that's as much as I am going to do with the gas tubes. And that's pretty much going to do it for the gas tubes. For the gas pistons, they're going to get a similar treatment to the gas tubes. I'm going to start off by scrubbing them with a nylon brush and just trying to get as much residue off of them as I can. Not really trying to get these spotless. I am just trying to get them clean so there's no undue friction inside of the gas tubes. And after that good scrubbing, I am just going to wipe them off with a dry cloth. And that's going to do it for the gas pistons. After both pistons are clean, I give a little bit of attention to my gas plugs. I don't do much to these. I do inspect the seals to make sure they're still present and also they look like they're in pretty good shape. I do scrub off the threads right here with my nylon brush, wherever I put it. Mainly just to keep them clean, to make sure that it doesn't get too difficult to install and remove these. If you saw my initial review video, you might recall that there was some sort of thread locker on here when I first received this from the factory, and it made it very, very difficult to remove these. And even after I got that stuff all off, once these are tightened down into the gas cylinders, after it's been fired several times, trying to remove them can take a little bit of effort. I still have to put the barrel in my vise and use my largest punch to try to turn these things out. So it's worth taking a couple of minutes just to clean these threads to try to make that at least less difficult than it might otherwise be. I've now completed my cleaning of the barrel and the gas system, so I am going to reassemble the gas system at this time, and that's pretty much going to do it for this portion of the 1014. Then I'll move on to the other parts. Due to the design of the 1014, there is not a lot of firing residue or carbon or anything else that makes it from the gas system back into this part of the shotgun, but it does get a little bit dirty. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a look at the fire control unit. As you can see, it is not really very dirty at all. If it was a little bit worse than this, I would probably spray it off with gun scrubber or something like that. As it is, I'm going to give it a quick scrubbing with my brush, wipe it off with a rag, and reinstall it into the receiver. One quick note before I reinstall the fire control is I am going to put a little bit of lube on basically all of the pivot points in the fire control. So either side of the hammer right here, a little bit right there on the inside of the bolt release, and a little bit right here on the carrier arm. And that should be sufficient. Now, as I said, I'm going to reinstall this in the receiver and we'll move on. Actually, before I reinstall that fire control group, I am going to go ahead and clean the inside of the receiver. This is pretty open inside here, so I'm just going to take my shop rag and try to get up inside there and get this nice and clean. I'm also going to do a quick cleaning on the magazine tube just to make sure that there's nothing down in there. And this is going to amount to just basically running a swab down through here and making sure that there's no firing residue, foreign material, or anything else down inside the magazine tube. This is going to be difficult to see, but as part of cleaning the receiver, I do spend just a little bit of time cleaning out these grooves right here where the gas pistons reciprocate in order to cause the bolt to move back and forth. And all I'm doing is just trying to make sure that there's no foreign material or anything else down in there that might impede those pistons. And this is already looking pretty clean. As I said, there's not a lot of firing residue that makes it back into this portion of the shotgun. As I said, part of cleaning the receiver is just swabbing out the magazine tube to make sure there's nothing down inside there. If you have an extended magazine, make sure you also clean the extensions for the same exact reason. And that actually looks pretty good. Finally, for the magazine, I'm going to scrub off the follower and wipe it down with a cloth. You can see it does not get real dirty, but again, I just don't want anything that might cause any friction as the shells are trying to move through the magazine tube. And that's it for the receiver and the magazine tube. Now I'm going to move on to the bolt and bolt carrier. For the bolt carrier, I'm simply going to scrub it inside and out to make sure that there is nothing on there that's going to impede its movement back and forth inside the receiver, and to make sure there's nothing down inside here that's going to impair the bolt as it reciprocates back and forth. I'll also clean off this old oil, and before it's all done, I'll put new oil down, and I'm going to get to that all right now. And when it comes to cleaning down inside the carrier, just about anything you can find to reach down in there and get that nice and clean is going to work. Again, it does not get extremely dirty because we don't have any gas coming back into the carrier like you would have with an AR-15. The bolt, similar to the carrier, does not get extremely dirty. I'm simply going to scrub this off once again with my nylon brush, and I will wipe it off with a cloth. And that's pretty much going to do it. For the bolt, I am going to spend just a little bit of time making sure there's no grit or anything under the extractor. But otherwise, I'm just generally scrubbing this off and making it nice and clean. Before I reinstall the bolt in the carrier, I am going to put a little bit of lube on the bolt body so it moves nice and smoothly inside the carrier. And before I reinstall the bolt and carrier into the receiver of the shotgun, I'm going to put some lube on the sides and on the back of the locking lug, again just to make sure that they move smoothly in and out of place as the bolt is locking and unlocking. And one last point about lubrication before I reinstall the bolt and carrier assembly back inside the receiver. I am going to put some lube on any parts of the carrier that are going to come in contact with the inside of the receiver. Again, I want everything to move nice and smoothly. The 1014 is now completely reassembled, and since a lot of these parts are freshly lubricated, at this juncture I'm going to just work the action a few times to distribute that lubricant and make sure everything is moving smoothly and it feels like it is. Next, I'm going to perform a function test on the fire control. First, by putting the safety on, the action is cocked, and I'm going to squeeze the trigger, and the hammer should not fall, and it's not. Now, I'm going to take the safety off, and I'm going to squeeze the trigger, and when I do, I'm going to hold the trigger to the rear, and the hammer fell, as it should. Now, this next part is going to take a little bit of contortion to be able to do it properly, because I'm going to cycle the action. It stays to the rear. Now I have to release it. It moves forward. And when I release the trigger at this point, it resets. So that is all working properly. Next, I'm going to do a function test on the magazine system and the feed function to make sure it is working properly. For this next test, I'm going to load 2 rounds of dummy ammunition. This is inert dummy ammo. You can see the primer is not a real primer. This is loaded with real shot though, so it gives it the proper weight for functioning and action. And I'm going to move these all the way forward into the magazine just like that. Now I'm going to release a shell, and as you can see, the magazine is retaining those shells at this point. Now a shell has moved back onto the carrier, so when I pull the bolt to the rear and release it, it loaded that shell. Now I'm going to squeeze the trigger, and when I do that, it should release that next dummy round onto the carrier, which it did. When I cycle the action this time, it extracts and ejects the fired shell and loads that fresh shell into the chamber. No issues there. I'll release the trigger again, squeeze it again, and this time the bolt should lock to the rear after that final shot. So no problems there. And I didn't want to do this on camera because it's going to be too hard to juggle shotgun, camera, and everything. But off camera, I am going to completely load the magazine and perform that test through the entire magazine column to make sure everything feeds properly and the bolt stays locked open after that last shot. For any of you that might be wondering, the MAC 1014 performed that final function test with no problems whatsoever. As I said early in the video, I have now owned this shotgun for almost exactly 2 years, and during that time it has been a tremendous firearm. I can only remember 2 stoppages that I've ever had with it, and at this point I've probably got somewhere between 700 and 1,000 rounds that I have run through this shotgun. The one stoppage was in my initial test when I first went out to the range and recorded the very first video, and if you saw it, you know that was due to a faulty or a defective shell that just would not feed properly, and I was able to find what was wrong with that shell and I showed it in front of the camera. The other stoppage was kind of odd. It could have also been ammunition related, but I'm just not sure. I fired, I believe, 3 rounds out of a full magazine, and on the 3rd round the action locked open, but there was a shell on the shell lifter, and the only thing that was required was just very quickly retracting the charging handle and releasing it. That shell went forward and I fired out the rest of the magazine. I don't know what caused that malfunction, but it has not occurred again since then, so I think it might have just been one of those random issues, either with the ammunition or maybe a piece of grit got somewhere inside the shotgun where it shouldn't have been. But otherwise, as I said, it has run flawlessly with the exception of those 2 instances, both of which might have been ammunition related. In any case, that's the 2-year update on my Military Armament Corporation 1014 shotgun. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, stop by my website, hrfunk.com, and check out the news and information page, see all the latest things going on with me and the channel, and go by the products page because a lot of the products I've reviewed have links on that page, and there's information beneath some of those links that'll save you some money if you decide to make a purchase. See you next time, folks. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.